Metal Gear Solid was brought into the world in 1987, before receiving its sequel in 1990. Post that, the game went into hiatus for a whole 8 years, later returning to the original PlayStation with the release of Metal Gear Solid. As of then, the rest is history. Metal Gear Solid took the franchise from a top-down platforming perspective to a fully realized 3D world. Not only did this game have a lot of action and versatility, but it also had a strong and unforgettable storyline. Since then, Metal Gear Solid games have been enjoying steady popularity up until 2015, when they again went on hiatus. However, with that said, we thought this would be a great moment to take a look back at the top 10 best Metal Gear Solid games to have been released of all time according to Metacritic. And of course, just before we do go into the video, if you do like this type of content and you would like to see some more top 10 videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button and of course, like this video. We do also stream over on Twitch. I will leave all the links within the description box below. And with all that said, let's just get straight into the list. These are the top 10 best Metal Gear Solid games of all time, according to Metacritic. Number 10, Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes. Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes is a widely cool blend of Hollywood action movie scenes, incredible stealth-based gameplay, and a larger-than-life boss encounters ensured hot sales and pushing of countless PlayStation consoles. It also signaled a massive shift into deeper, more mature storylines in games. This game was later ported to the Nintendo GameCube, although a lot of stuff had changed and not always for the better. While the visuals were a major upgrade from the original, there was some criticism about the dialogue and changes to some of the game's key scenes. Number 9, Metal Gear Solid 2: Substance. One of the many things that Metal Gear Solid does well as a franchise is produce quality additions to their existing games. This they did several times, and one of the best was Metal Gear Solid 2: Substance. Initially, this was a version of the sequel that was released for the Xbox, but eventually came to the Sony systems as well. It had the elements of the original gameplay itself, but added fun modes like boss survival and casting theater, where you could put anyone in the cast into any cutscene from the game. On top of that, it also had a European extreme difficulty mode, and the PS2 version even got a skateboarding mode. Number 8, Metal Gear Solid: Portable Ops. Portable Ops was one of the first Metal Gear Solid games to be ported to a handheld, specifically the Sony PSP. This game was in high demand, but this installment was meant to be more of a story-driven successor to the games that came before it. It's also one of the few games to focus on squad tactics instead of lone wolf infiltration. The game continues Snake's adventure 6 years after Metal Gear Solid 3 ended, with a story that plays into the larger narrative established in past games. This game managed to score high, which is good news for the franchise, since it was the first title that was released for the PSP, a smaller gaming platform. Number 7, Metal Gear Solid: Peacewalker. Peacewalker was a great Metal Gear Solid game that unfortunately came out at the wrong time. The PSP was in decline, and it was only a matter of time before the system would stop producing games. As such, the sales weren't exactly stellar, but at least it told a great story while leaving Metal Gear Solid fans something to rave about. The game sets up events that would eventually lead into the main Metal Gear Solid narrative, and eventually the events of Metal Gear Solid. It's a good game for those to play who aren't familiar with certain key characters that pop up in Metal Gear Solid 5. Number 6, Metal Gear Solid 3: Snake Eater. The first two Metal Gear Solid games in the franchise were largely linear stories that tackled each section by offering players a choice of how to engage. Metal Gear Solid 3 took the concepts much further by throwing players into a jungle and forcing them to rely on the environment in order to complete their mission. As such, it was the beginning of the series, moving away from the traditional formula into a more open world approach. By today's standards, it still feels condensed, but for fans who had mastered the Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 games, it was a much welcomed improvement. It also marked the shift in the narrative towards Big Boss, as opposed to Solid Snake. Number 5, Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Clearly the most ambitious Metal Gear Solid game to have ever been released. The Phantom Pain is the first game to offer players a completely non-linear approach when it comes to missions, directives, and goals. Unfortunately, the game lost a lot of exposition in the process, and the story took a backseat to the gameplay as gamers concentrated on finding new ways to defeat foes, tackle challenges, and build up their army. Part stealth action-adventure game, and part resource management game, the Phantom Pain wasn't perfect, but it was clearly a semi-flawed recipe for success. Number 4, Metal Gear Solid 4: Guns of the Patriots. Guns of the Patriots had one major goal in mind: to wrap up the Solid Snake story arc once and for all. This game was an ambitious title that was also a little bit iffy due to the leap backward in time that occurred in Metal Gear Solid 3. Yet this highly anticipated game hit the PS3 with full thunder, and the rest, as they say, is history. The narrative sometimes is incredibly hard to follow, particularly when it comes to the long cutscenes. In between all the talking, there's an incredible stealth tactic to the game that players really enjoyed. With that said, Metal Gear Solid 4 is a spectacular game all around. Number 3. Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence. Though Metal Gear Solid 3 made a good enough splash on its own, it was faced by the aging gameplay mechanics that detracted away from the diverse open world that it was boasting. This game though fixed that by integrating a new dynamic new camera system into the game that included a few discs worth of bonus material for Metal Gear Solid fans to entertain themselves with. In many ways, this game was the special edition of Metal Gear Solid 3, and it outranks the original release. Gamers who want the definitive edition should definitely pick this up, as there's a lot to unpack and enjoy. Number 2. Metal Gear Solid. The first Metal Gear Solid was amazing on so many levels, and it's still the entry that other chapters are based on. It was the first game to revive the old Konami property without dismissing everything that had come before it. As such, Metal Gear Solid was a contribution of the classic Metal Gear games, rather than just a reimagination. It also propelled the first PlayStation to the forefront of the video game console wars, making this game a major win. The mixture of high-octane action, adrenaline-pumping stealth mechanics, and a memorable storyline helped solidify Metal Gear Solid as the action franchise to beat. This game is still a masterpiece despite its aged gameplay mechanics and graphics, with no subsequent sequel quite managing to balance all the elements so perfectly. Number 1. Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Fans who loved the original Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation were very much eager to get their hands on the sequel, and it delivered. It wasn't a perfect experience, however, and in addition to that, many gamers were angry when they learned that Solid Snake would not be the game's major protagonist. Some felt it was a bit of a bait and switch on Konami's part, while others simply disliked the character of Raiden. Nevertheless, Metal Gear Solid 2 hit all the right notes and delivered upon everything that made the original such a hit. It was bigger, more ambitious, and far more ominous in tone. It would also mark the first Metal Gear Solid game to move fully into a wider narrative territory, which would become the staple of the series from that point on. And so there you pretty much have it. Those were the top 10 best Metal Gear Solid games of all time according to Metacritic. So what did you think of this list? Do you agree with the top 10? Or perhaps that there's a Metal Gear Solid game not on this list that should have been included? If so, do let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. I would love to hear it. And of course, if you do like this type of content and you would like to see some more top 10 videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button and of course, like this video. I'll also leave some more top 10 videos at the end of this video if you would like to check them out. Thanks very much for watching guys, and I will see you all next time.